Hello everyone, welcome back to another YouTube video. Today we're going to be talking about Percy Jackson Season 2 and the fact that we finally, at the very last minute, have our Season 2 episode titles. Now, literally I think like over a year ago, I made a video where I did my best to guess what I think each episode title would be for Season 2. Some of them I got right, some of them I didn't. Some of them I had right, but I was off by like one episode. I also tried to use math to sort of like guesstimate how long the episodes would be that I was guessing based on how many chapters it would cover compared to Season 1. So I'm going to kind of do that again in this video because I felt like that was fun. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about what the official episode titles are and what will probably be covered in each episode. And also I'll share with you guys what my initial guesses were over a year ago. So episode 1 is going to be called I Play Dodgeball with Cannibals. And this episode will cover roughly chapters 1 through 5 in the Sea of Monsters book, meaning that it will start with Percy at Merryweather Prep with Tyson. It'll have the Grey Sisters taxi in it. We'll have Percy, Annabeth, and Tyson arriving to camp. We'll see Tantalus coming to camp and Chiron leaving camp. And I assume episode 1 would end with the big reveal that Tyson is Percy's brother. This is basically identical to what I predicted about a year ago. I said that the episode would be called either I Play Dodgeball with Cannibals or I Get a New Cabin Mate. So I was right. I also said back then that I do think it would be a perfect ending for episode 1 for the reveal to be that Tyson is Percy's brother. I just think that that's a good sort of like cliffhanger ending for your first episode of a season, and I think it'll really pull people in. Now for the math portion of this to try and see how long each episode could possibly be, I'm going to look at Season 2 Episode 1 versus Season 1 Episode 1, and I'll be doing that for every episode. And I'm going to look at what each episode covers in terms of chapters for its book and how many pages that is roughly. And we can kind of assume maybe that like the amount of book pages equals a certain amount of screenplay written. So this is so silly. This is the math equation I'm using. Okay? So bear with me. Season 1, Episode 1 of Percy Jackson covered chapters 1 through 5 of The Lightning Thief, which is about 75 pages. And Episode 1 was about a 38-minute long episode. For Sea of Monsters, Episode 1 I think is also going to cover roughly 5 chapters. And chapters 1 through 5 in the Sea of Monsters book are about 65 pages. So I think Season 2, Episode 1 could be about 33 minutes in comparison, like based on my math, but I do think that the first episode of the season will be much longer than just 33 minutes, especially because we already know a few things based on the trailer that aren't in the book are definitely going to be added to the show. For example, we know that Percy and Annabeth and Tyson are going to physically see Luke poison Thalia's tree. Not only is that something completely new for them, so they'll probably have to talk about it, meaning more screen time, but that also means that the border to camp isn't like fully down yet by the time they arrive to camp in the show. And I'm pretty sure in the book, like when they get to camp is already being attacked by monsters. So that's definitely different. We also know either from trailer moments or from like official stills, we see Tyson in Percy and Sally's like apartment. So there's definitely going to be some scenes added, I think, before they leave Merryweather Prep and go to camp. We also know that at some point in Season 2, they're going to be adding flashbacks of young Annabeth, young Luke, and Thalia, and we really don't know where those flashbacks could end up, so it's very possible we could get our first flashback somewhere in Episode 1, making the runtime even longer. So if I had to guess, I would think that Season 2, Episode 1 would probably be like 45 minutes long. Plus, I also think there's been like rumors that the run times for Season 2 are longer than the run times for Season 1. So I'm hoping that rumor's true. Moving on to Episode 2. Episode 2 is going to be called Demon Pigeons Attack. And this episode is going to cover chapters 6 and 7, and maybe possibly a little bit of chapter 8. I don't know. But this means that episode 2 would include the following. Definitely lots of moments at Camp Half-Blood, probably a lot that aren't in the book. They're definitely, I think, going to add to that to sort of world build in Camp Half-Blood. We'll get Percy and Annabeth fighting, Percy working on the chariot with Tyson. The chariot race itself, which is going to be, I think, a huge like set piece, and I think it's going to take up a lot of like runtime of the episode. I think we'll also get to see Clarice getting the quest of this season, and of course we're going to get to see Hermes talking to Percy on the beach. And I do think it makes sense to end this episode with the conversation between Percy and Hermes, especially if they go a lot deeper with that conversation and talk more about Luke, which I think that they will. Originally, in my video a year ago, I thought that this episode would be called We Board the Princess Andromeda. I was so close because, spoiler alert, episode 3 is called that. And I thought that maybe episode 2 would end with Percy, Annabeth, and Tyson making it onto Luke's ship. And honestly, since, at least in the book, the time between like Percy and Hermes talking and when they get onto Luke's ship is like so close to each other, I think episode 2 could end with either or, but I'm leaning more towards it ending with Percy's conversation with Hermes. So season 1, episode 2 covered chapters 9 through 10 of The Lightning Thief. And that's roughly about 92 pages, which is a lot. And that in total gave us a 44-minute long episode. I'm assuming season 2, episode 2 covers just chapters 6 and 7. So that's about 41 pages. So that would give us roughly a 20-minute episode. Again, if we're assuming that the same amount of pages means the same amount of like screen time, right? This is all an assumption. But, well, again, I don't think that this episode would only be 20 minutes long. I think that they're going to add a lot into it, a lot into that time. Like I said, world building at Camp Half-Blood I think will be huge. I think we'll be seeing lots more conversations between characters that we maybe don't necessarily get to see in the books. Like I think we'll see more with Mr. D and Tantalus. And I think maybe we'll get to like even see Clarice get the prophecy, because we don't have to stay strictly in Percy's POV when we're doing the show. So I think that there's a lot that they can add to it. Plus, like I said, I do think that the chariot race will be taking up a lot of runtime, which I'm totally fine with. It looks like a huge set piece, so I am very excited to see that. So I'm not worried about episode 2 being too short, by the way. I think it'll probably also be around 35 to 40 minutes, if I had to guess. Moving on to episode 3. Episode 3 is called We Board the Princess Andromeda. And this episode is going to cover chapters 8 through 10, meaning this episode will have the following in it. The trio is going to find their way onto Luke's ship. They'll do whatever they do on the Princess Andromeda. They're going to have to escape the Princess Andromeda, which in the book has them ending up on Virginia Beach, where the whole monster donut and Hydra thing happens. Now, I'm still not 100% certain that that's going to happen in the TV show, because we really haven't seen anything hinting at the Hydra in like promo, in trailers, in really anything. So I don't know if the Hydra is going to be in season 2, to be quite honest with you. I hope it is, but I don't know. But regardless, they're going to escape Luke's ship and they'll end up on a beach somewhere. And then hypothetically, if the Hydra exists, that will all happen. Clarice will show up on the beach. She'll kill the Hydra. And then everyone will get onto Clarice's ship. In my original video a year ago, I thought that this episode would be called I Have the Worst Family Reunion Ever. But generally, I had anticipated it also still covering chapters 8 through 10, so I was like half right, I guess. I just picked the wrong chapter title. Now, season 1, episode 3 covered chapters 11 and 12 of The Lightning Thief, which is only about 28 pages, and it gave us a 45-minute long episode. If season 2, episode 3 covers chapters 8 through 10 of Sea of Monsters, that's about 41 pages, so mathematically that would give us about a 65-minute long episode. Now, I really don't think that this episode would be that long, but I could realistically totally see it being anywhere from 45 to 50 minutes. It is actually kind of crazy that these chapters are 41 pages, because like so much is squeezed into the Sea of Monsters, really, if you think about it. Like, it's the smallest Percy Jackson book, but so much is squeezed in there. It's kind of crazy. Not to mention, it's very possible that this episode could have a flashback in it of young Annabeth and Luke and Thalia, as Annabeth maybe kind of explains why she doesn't like Cyclopses. I think that could either happen in this episode or would happen in episode 5. I know it happens later on in the book, but I think they kind of maybe want to spread the flashbacks out. I don't know. One thing we do know for sure, though, is that in this episode we will be getting the very intense fight scene on the beach between Percy and Clarice. Those shots of them on the beach have been used in like every promo ever since promo for season 2 started. So that's going to be happening in this episode. Not to mention, you never know how many times this episode could cut away from Percy's POV and go and see what Luke's doing, go and see what Clarice is doing, going to see what's happening at camp. Like, there's plenty of times that we could cut away from Percy's perspective in this episode, meaning the runtime would be pretty long. Moving on, episode 4 is going to be titled Clarice Blows Up Everything. And this episode is interesting because it seemingly covers one singular chapter in the books, which is just chapter 11. This episode, assuming it covers chapter 11, would have everyone on Clarice's ship. We'd probably see Ares show up as well. We would see them all enter the Sea of Monsters. And of course, as the title implies, we would see Clarice's ship blow up. Originally, a year ago, I thought that episode 4 would be titled We Check In to Cece's Spa and Resort. And I thought that this episode might cover the Sea of Monsters moment and Cece's Spa. But clearly that is not the case because, spoiler alert, episode 5 is called We Check Into Cece's Spa and Resort. So season 1, episode 4 of Percy Jackson covered chapters 13 and 14 of The Lightning Thief, which was about 21 pages, and that gave us a 34-minute long episode, which was one of the shortest episodes in season 1. Season 2, episode 4 is hypothetically covering just chapter 11, meaning it's covering just about 17 pages, so mathematically that would give us about a 28-minute episode. Once again, I do not think this is accurate. I think that based on the trailers, it's very clear to me that the whole Sea of Monsters sequence is going to be a huge event, and honestly a pretty long sequence. Like, it's not going to be 5 minutes. I think it's going to be a long amount of this episode. Not to mention, I think that we're going to get more moments between characters on Clarice's ship, specifically Percy and Annabeth. So I think that this episode can definitely be stretched out to 35 or 40 minutes, but I would not be shocked if season 2 episode 4 ends up being one of the shorter episodes of season 2, especially considering it only hypothetically covers one chapter. However, moving right along, episode 5, like I said, is going to be We Check Into Cece's Spa and Resort. And I think that this episode is going to cover chapters 12 through 14, meaning that this episode would have the following: Percy and Annabeth arriving at Cece's Island, of course, Percy turning into a guinea pig, Annabeth getting her makeover, them escaping Cece's Island, possibly a flashback as to why Annabeth hates Cyclopses. Like I said, that either happens, I think, in episode 3 or episode 5. I just feel like episode 5 already has a lot going on. So even though this in the book is where she tells Percy why she doesn't like Cyclopses, I think they might change it to happen earlier because I think episode 5 already has too much happening. Percy also has his Chronos dream that includes Thalia this time. I really hope they keep that in the show. I think that'd be really interesting. Of course, the iconic siren scene. And this episode could potentially either end with Percy saving Annabeth from the sirens, or it could end with them arriving at Monster Island. It's either or. Originally, I thought that episode 5 would be called Annabeth Tries to Swim Home, and I thought that episode 5 would focus mainly on the siren scene, but I do think I'm okay with Cece's Spa and the siren scene all being one episode, especially if they do make this a longer episode. I also do really like the idea of episode 5 of each season being like the Percabeth episode, because I think season 1 episode 5 was very Percabeth heavy, so I think it'd be really cool if they continue that in season 3, 4, and 5. So season 1 episode 5 covered just one chapter of The Lightning Thief. It covered chapter 15, which was about 22 pages of the book, but it still managed to give us a 40-minute episode. Now, if you don't remember, season 1 episode 5 is the Tunnel of Love episode. They did add a lot to that episode with Grover and Ares, so I think that's how they managed to give us a very long runtime covering just one episode of the book. Now, according to my math, season 2 episode 5, like I said, I think it will cover chapters 12 through 14, meaning that's about 50 book pages. So mathematically, that would equal about a 90-minute episode. I don't think that's happening. I would love it. I wouldn't say no to it, but I don't see them giving us any episodes longer than an hour personally, at least not in season 2. But I do think that episode 5 needs to be longer, considering how important Cece's Spa is and how important the siren scene is. I don't want them to rush either of those things. So I think that episode 5 will need to be longer. Plus, I think they, as writers, are going to want to go more in on Cece's Spa and on the siren scene. So I think that it's going to be a longer runtime for sure. So I wouldn't be shocked if episode 5 is like 50 to maybe even 55 minutes. And hey, I don't think anybody would complain. I do think a way to make this episode shorter, though, would be ending it right after Percy saves Annabeth from the sirens for sure, and then letting episode 6 start out with them arriving at Monster Island. which I think is highly possible that that's what they'll do. So speaking of, episode 6 is called Nobody Gets the Fleece. And I think that this episode will cover chapter 15 of the book, maybe a little bit of 14, depending on, like I said, where episode 5 ends. In this episode, I think that it will include Percy and Annabeth making it to Monster Island, them finding Clarice and Grover, Annabeth being nobody and distracting Polyphemus, Percy saving Grover and Clarice, us finding out Tyson's alive, which will be so exciting, Annabeth getting injured, them using the Golden Fleece to heal her, and the group almost escaping, but Polyphemus stops them. Originally, I thought that episode 6 would be titled I Go Down with the Ship. And once again, just like episode 4, I was an episode early with this title because, spoiler alert, I Go Down with the Ship is what episode 7 is called. So season 1, episode 6 covers just chapter 16 from the Lightning Thief book. And that's about 23 pages. And it gave us about a 34-minute episode, which again is one of the shorter episodes of season 1. Season 2, episode 6 will possibly cover just chapter 15 of Sea of Monsters, which is actually only about 10 pages. So compared to season 1, episode 6, also covering one chapter, it's still different in terms of how many pages are in this chapter. So mathematically, season 2, episode 6 would be about 15 minutes. Obviously, that's not going to be the case. At the very least, I do think that this could also be one of the shortest episodes of season 2, maybe coming in at around 35 minutes, kind of similar to season 1. But if it's coming after episode 5, which would hopefully be a longer episode, I don't know if I'd be too upset about that. I do also think that what season 2, episode 6 would be covering is a lot of action. And I think that fight scenes and action scenes probably take much longer on screen than they do on a physical paper. So like them fighting Polyphemus, them finding their friends, Annabeth being nobody, I think all of that could take up enough time to definitely fill out a 35-minute episode. But I do think that this will probably be one of the shorter episodes of season 2. Episode 7 is going to be called I Go Down with the Ship. And I think it'll cover chapters 16 and 17, maybe a little bit of 18. I don't know. I think it's tricky because episode 8 is called The Fleece Works Its Magic Too Well, which is the final chapter of the Sea of Monsters, but I do think that the final episode of the show will cover more than just the final chapter. So assuming episode 7 of season 2 covers like roughly chapters 16 to 18, episode 7 would include Polyphemus sinking their ship, which could also potentially happen in episode 6, by the way. The hippocampy saving everybody and taking them to Miami. Luke kidnapping them and taking them onto his ship. And very possibly the party ponies showing up at episode 7, but that could also be saved for episode 8. Now, I will say this. I think it's safe to say we know that Clarice at some point is going to end up on the Princess Andromeda with the rest of our group. We know that from trailers. We've seen shots of her on the Princess Andromeda. And we've also seen many shots of Percy running around the Princess Andromeda with the Golden Fleece in his possession, as opposed to the book where they send Clarice away while they're in Miami before Luke kidnaps them. They send Clarice away. She takes a plane with the Golden Fleece back to camp. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen in the show. I think Clarice is going to get kidnapped with them. They're going to end up on the Princess Andromeda with the Golden Fleece, which I think will actually be better because the fleece being on the ship where Kronos' coffin literally is, I think will definitely like increase the tension and will make for a much more like dramatic moment, you know? So I think the main juice of episode 7 will be them on Luke's ship. And I'm thinking it's possible that maybe the party ponies would show up at the end of episode 7 as like a good cliffhanger, sort of. Originally, I thought that episode 7 would be called The Party Ponies Invade. Clearly, I was wrong. Season 1, episode 7 of the show covered chapters 17 through 19 of The Lightning Thief, and that is roughly 53 pages, and resulted in a 41-minute long episode. It's hard for me to guess how much episode 7 of season 2 will cover when it comes to like the chapters of the book, but if I'm assuming it mainly covers chapters 16 and 17, maybe a little bit of 18, that could be anywhere around like 22 pages, roughly. So using my math, that would be a 17-minute long episode, which once again, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that they are really going to have a lot to build off of when it comes to Luke this season. So I think that this whole showdown on Luke's ship is going to be a very big deal. It's going to feel a lot bigger than it does in the book. And I think it is going to take up a crap ton of screen time. Not to mention, I really have no way of guessing where episode 7 will end. So it's very possible it goes further into chapter 18 and the party ponies show up and take everybody back to New York. It's very possible that that happens. So I think that episode 7 will be actually around 35 to 40 minutes. And finally, episode 8 is officially titled The Fleece Works Its Magic Too Well. And I think that this episode will cover chapters 19 and 20 of The Sea of Monsters, and however much of 18 that episode 7 doesn't cover, obviously. This episode would cover everybody getting back to camp. It would cover the second chariot race scene, if that's still happening. And obviously, it would cover Thalia coming back to life. There are some moments in the trailers that could either be in this episode or in episode 2, if you ask me. We have seen photos of Sally driving Percy and Annabeth, and maybe I think Tyson, I can't quite remember, around a place that was called Port Jefferson, which is a real place. It's in Long Island, New York. So I think it's very possible that that's where Luke's ship is docked. And either in episode 2 or 3, Percy needs Sally to drive them to Port Jefferson, or in episode 8, or episode 7, whatever, the party ponies will drop Percy and his friends off at Port Jefferson, and they need Sally to come and pick them up. I think it'll be one of those two things, so it's possible that that scene with Sally could be in this episode. We also know from the trailers that Luke's army attacks at Camp Half-Blood. It's kind of hard to tell if it's during the first chariot race or maybe the second one. We can assume it is right around after a chariot racing happens though, because everybody is in their chariot race armor. And personally, I am leaning towards this is happening towards the end of the series. It just seems like it's going to be a big battle, and I don't think that they would put that in episode 2 or 3. I think that that's something you save for your finale. So if that's the case, if that Sally scene happens in episode 8, if that Luke and his army scene happens in episode 8, this episode definitely has a bit going on, so I'm not too worried about it only covering the last 2 chapters of the book. I originally, a year ago, thought that this final episode would be called The Fleece Works Its Magic Too Well, and I was right, but also I think that that's a pretty easy one to guess. Season 1, episode 8 covered chapters 20 to 22 of The Lightning Thief. That's about 21 book pages, and it equaled a 42-minute episode. Season 2, episode 8 would be covering chapters 19 through 20 of the Sea of Monsters book, which would be about 24 pages, meaning it could be about a 48-minute long episode, and I think that that's actually pretty accurate. I would expect the finale to be anywhere between 45 to 50 minutes long, personally. Especially because I feel like the most book changes that could happen in Season 2, I feel like are going to happen towards the back half. I think we know what we're getting ourselves into with this season, but I don't think we know quite where it's going to end, which I personally find exciting. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like there's definitely the most that could potentially be changed in the finale. So that one I think is the hardest to guess in terms of runtime and what chapters it covers, because you just don't know what they're going to do. Now, compared to Season 1, I think that the chapters are spread out much better in Season 2. And you guys know, I'm a visual learner. I've been putting graphics up this whole video. So here's a little side-by-side of what episode in each season is and how many chapters of the book it covers. Season 1 had episodes 1 and 2 covering 5 chapters each. And that meant as you got to episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6 of Season 1, those episodes were covering just 1, maybe 2 chapters of the book. And that's kind of how we ended up with not so great runtimes, I think, for Season 1. Now, I don't know necessarily where I would have divided the chapters in Season 1. I do think they divided them at the right spots. It's just a matter of what the book was. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's not that they did a bad job, but I just think that they were spread out weirdly. You know what I mean? And then you look at Season 2, and you've got something like Episode 1 of Season 2 is also covering 5 chapters, but then Episode 2 is only covering 2 chapters. And then episode 3 is 3 chapters, and so on and so forth. And I just feel like they're spread out much better in the Sea of Monsters season. I also think that there are lots of things in the season 2 trailers that we have that just aren't in the books, and we really don't know where they are going to end up in this season. Like I said, I've already mentioned that extra scene that we're going to have with Sally. I've already mentioned that scene of Luke and his army attacking camp. We've got the scene of Luke stabbing Thalia's tree. Clearly, they're doing a lot more with Luke, which I love. Capital L, love that they're doing more with Luke. But we also know, for example, that like Poseidon is going to show up and actually talk to Percy from the trailers. I feel like that's probably going to be in the finale because we know that Percy gets a letter from Poseidon at the end of the Sea of Monsters book. There could also, like I said, potentially be multiple flashbacks of young Annabeth and young Luke and Thalia together throughout all of season 2. I'm hoping for at least 3 flashbacks. 3 minimum. Not to mention, you never know what they're going to do with flashbacks with young Percy. We got a lot of young Percy flashbacks in season 1, and I loved those. We also don't know how much they're going to do with Percy and his dreams about Grover and his dreams about Kronos. Percy has so many dreams, guys. That's going to take up a lot of time. We know that they're adding more to the siren scene and probably other things that I haven't even listed off. There's probably going to be a scene somewhere with Zeus, whether it's a present day scene with Zeus or a flashback moment with Zeus, but they recast, obviously, who plays Zeus because we lost Lance Reddick, rest in peace. So why would they have recast Zeus for season 2 if they're not going to use him? I think that there will be a moment somewhere in season 2 with Zeus, obviously. There's just so much. There's so much going on in the trailers, in behind the scenes photos that we know of, but we don't know where it's going to end up because it's not in the book. So it is really tricky to try and guess what the run times of each episode in season 2 will be. But I do think it's safe to say that we can hope for them to be longer than season 1. I think that that's a safe assumption. I think that that's a pretty safe assumption at this point. Now, in terms of, I'm going to go ahead and claim for you guys what I think my favorite episodes of season 2 will be. I think my favorite episodes are either going to be episode 5, we check in to Cece's Spawn Resort, or episode 8, The Fleece Works Its Magic Too Well, which is really ironic because I do remember specifically my 2 favorite episodes of season 1 were also episode 5 and episode 8. So if again after season 2 my favorite episodes are episode 5 and episode 8, I'm just going to start seeing a pattern. Now I remember also my least favorite episodes of season 1 were episodes 4 and episode 6. Those were the shortest episodes of season 1. And that does kind of concern me because episodes 4 and 6 of Sea of Monsters are the episodes that cover one singular chapter. And are the episodes that I said I wouldn't be shocked if they have the shortest screen time. And are the episodes that I said I wouldn't be shocked if those are the shortest runtimes. So we're kind of getting a perfect mirror of a season in a way. However, I do think I will like season 2, episode 4. Maybe also episode 6, but I feel like episode 4 I will like because that's when they're going into the Sea of Monsters and I think I'm going to have fun with that. But it's anybody's guess who my least favorite episodes will be. But I do think I will probably end up favoring the episodes of season 2, episode 5 and season 2, episode 8. Just a guess. I want you guys to comment down below what you think of the episode titles, and I want you to let me know what you think your favorite episode is going to be preemptively. I think we can all agree we're probably all going to like episode 5 of season 2 because of the siren scene. So if that's your answer to what you think your favorite episode will be, give me another answer. Give me your top 2. Give me what you think your favorite 2 episodes will be. I'm very curious to see what you guys think. Let me know what you think of the episode titles. Let me know if you tried to guess the episode titles yourself and got them all right. I got 5 titles right, but I didn't necessarily get the placement correct. So I don't know what score I would give myself. But regardless, I do think that does it for this video. I cannot wait for Percy Jackson season 2 to come out in December. I have so much content planned for it. I have so much other Percy Jackson stuff planned for December as well that I literally cannot wait to share with you guys. Like, you guys have no idea. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. You don't want to miss out on any of that. I am so excited. I cannot wait. But that pretty much does it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.